Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I would like to discuss my favourite things from June 2024 and also do a goals check-in. Throughout the year, I've been choosing 3 books that I've read in a month, apart from May in which I could only pick 2, and sharing my favourite books from each month, as well as favourite TV shows and music listened to and that sort of thing. This month, I can only share my 3 favourite books. I read 4, so you can probably guess that we still aren't back to the reading standard that we uphold for ourselves. I enjoyed all of the books I read in June. It's just that The Sleeping Beauty by Elizabeth Taylor I did not think was her best work, and it had a few issues that I just couldn't get past. I will just go in order of the books that I read when I read them. Firstly, we have Way of the Argosi by Sebastien de Castell. I tried reading this a few months ago and could not get into it. When I went back to it, it was exactly the sort of fantasy, adventure, escapism that I'd been looking for and needed at that time. Way of the Argosi is a spin-off series from the Spellslinger series following the character of Ferius Parthax. Or is she Ferius? She is unsure of her identity throughout this book due to some machinations by the magicians that we know from the Spellslinger series. I've never been the biggest fan of prequels. A lot of people will ask me, am I going to write prequels to the Ardoris series set in the 50s and 60s when she was a teenager just going into her adulthood? And I've always maintained that I wouldn't do that because you always know where the character's going to end up. I feel like oftentimes in stories you know enough about a character to tell the story. So whilst I enjoyed this, and it was great to see how Ferius becomes the person that she is in the Spellslinger series, and Sebastien de Castell always knows how to write a gripping yarn that you can't put down really. Part of me is just like, are prequels always unnecessary? I don't know, but I enjoyed this and I'm looking forward to reading the next book in the series, and then when I'm buying books again, being able to finish the series. And then I read The Forever Sea by Joshua Phillip Johnson. This is a book with a fantastical world in which the Forever Sea is actually a huge overgrown forest, and the ships that glide over them really seem more like airships that are powered by fire and bones. Kindred, who is our protagonist, has an affinity with the bones and the magic that other people don't have. This book follows her as she recognises that the world she's part of has become more corrupt. She receives news that her grandmother has died, but she doesn't really have the time to process that before everything goes to hell. And it's a huge book. I really enjoyed the way that the author crafted the novel. I said that it reminded me of a fantastical video game when I was reading it, just because of the way that it is formatted, but that worked for me. I like the descriptions, I like the world, I like the characterization. I like that sometimes Kindred is a little bit selfish and you can tell she's not necessarily making the best decisions. I liked her interactions with the other characters as well, and the way that she fit in with everything, and the way that perhaps when she made these decisions, there were actual repercussions to those decisions if they weren't beneficial to other people, and seeing how this all worked out. Again, just like The Way of the Argosi, really. Once I'm buying books again, I will probably purchase the sequel to this. Finally, we have The Sisters Brothers by Patrick DeWitt. This is a book that my volunteer said was in her top 5 books of all time, and I ought to read it. It follows the eponymous Sisters Brothers as they are sent on this quest by the Commodore. They have been told that they must kill a man, and this takes them across America as they go to do that. But you also examine their relationship and how they became the men that they are today, all from the perspective of the younger brother, Eli. You know something dark has gone on in their past. You don't necessarily find out what that is. It doesn't matter whether you find out what this is, because this is about their relationship. It's a bit of a Western novel, but it also has some adventure elements and some surreal moments in there too. I particularly enjoyed this. I wouldn't say it's reached the same heights as it has for that volunteer of mine, but I was researching what Patrick DeWitt has also written since this book came out. But that's the books, because music-wise, I haven't listened to anything new. I've stuck to listening to my liked songs on Spotify, and All I can say is that there's been a bit more Delta Goodrum in there because, once again, I've been listening to her song Alcohol, but I think I've mentioned that before. All the same favourites that we've had all year. Chapel Rowan, Delta Goodrum. Is that the end of the list at the moment? Moona. They have released their album of live music from the Greek Theatre. I haven't listened to the whole thing yet, but the songs that I have listened to, I have enjoyed. Although, you know, it's Moona, I'm probably going to enjoy anything that they ever do. Television-wise, in June, I finally finished watching Modern Family. I don't think that the final few series were my favourites. I don't like the final season at all. It's incredibly choppy and bitty. You don't get to see all of the characters for enough of the time for it to feel like there is a proper resolution to the story. I just feel like they betrayed the characters with the way that they chose to end it. Like most shows, it went on a lot longer than it needed to. Then Doctor Who as well. For me, I was incredibly disappointed by the finale. I don't think that 8 episodes was long enough for the season, especially considering the number of Doctor Light episodes that were in here. We had 2 in a row, and we never got to see the natural progression of the relationship between the Doctor and his companion. It just felt like we're expected to believe it's now there. And I don't know whether it's because of this generation of television where everything moves incredibly quickly and there isn't so much focus on storytelling. I did like a lot of the episodes, and I'm hoping that certain things that happened will be explained in the next series, but I think that the creators of this series in particular have asked a lot of the audience to expect them to come back for the next series, especially when they didn't deliver on a lot of the promises they made at the beginning of the series. That was basically the majority of what I watched, although I did go back and start watching Matt Smith's Doctor again. It's funny to me because about 18 months ago, I did a video in which I said I'd been watching Matt Smith's Doctor again and had a new appreciation for it. And Charlie Brooke Reeves had commented on that video, and it's only now, all this time later, that I've actually gone back and I finished watching his run as the Doctor. And quite honestly, he's a new favourite of mine at the moment, because back then it was like a huge change to have this Doctor come in, and I was a lot more involved in watching the classic Who as well, and this person just had a completely different sensibility. But then when I watch it as a whole story, I feel like it works a lot more. So I don't know how I'm going to get on with Peter Capaldi. I've watched 2 episodes, I've got the 3rd to watch, and I haven't yet warmed to him. We have to remember that Peter Capaldi was the one that I stopped watching for quite a few years then. I think I stopped watching and then didn't go back for 4 years. So we will see how I get on. Let's talk about my goals. I previously did a goals check-in in March at the end of the month, and so I think I'll do this every 3 months. So firstly, one of the goals that I made in 2024 was to read the books from my shelves. It's the whole reason that I haven't been buying books or borrowing them from the library, and I have continued to read the books from my shelves. I now only have 30 books left unread. Admittedly, I have become more strict with unhauling books as well, DNFing books. If I've recognised that a book isn't what I thought it was going to be, then I have just started DNFing it. I don't currently have a problem with that. I haven't missed any of the books that I've DNF'd. I've gone back and looked at the list I originally created, and when I've seen that I DNF'd a book or unhauled it, it feels like, yeah, I made the correct decision there, because I'd forgotten that had even occurred. The next goal was to read the entirety of Elizabeth Taylor's catalogue. I was doing this by reading 1 book a month, and so I have 1 book of hers left to read in July, and then I am done with all of her novels. Then we have read more Anthony Trollope, because I wanted to get above 10 Anthony Trollope's read. I did not fulfil that goal this month. I did from January to March, I read 1, and my plan was to read 1 every quarter, because that would take me over the threshold, but I missed out. I was planning a whole video where I would read the first chapter of 5 Anthony Trollope books, and then something occurred, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people on YouTube know about now, but it kind of sent my reading off in a different direction, and I just could not contend with Anthony Trollope this month. Then we have read more non-fiction. I still haven't read any non-fiction, and I actually unhauled 2 of the non-fiction books from my shelves. I only have 2 left there, and maybe I'm just not a non-fiction reader. I don't know. You know, I've always said that when it comes to non-fiction, that's just not something I navigate towards. and I'd much prefer to watch that sort of thing in a documentary. Read more poetry. There are no poetry books in my room for me to read, so this has been the only time that anything's been borrowed this year. I suppose I could read some of the poetry journals in there. Is this what this meant? Was I supposed to read some of the poetry magazines that I haven't read yet? Because I haven't done that. I could do that. But do I include them in a reading journal? I don't know. It is my reading journal. I should be allowed to do what I like. Then I wanted to read more Larry McMurtry. I'm trying to read Larry McMurtry, but maybe Lonesome Dove is the only book of his I ever wanted to read.
A few moments later.
So this goal is no longer happening. I chose not to continue reading Streets of Laredo after reading further on, and then I read some reviews of the earlier books. I just think that this is a writer, if I'd read him when I bought the books, I probably would have a more favourable opinion, but I've changed as a reader since I acquired these books, and I'm finding that a lot at the moment, that the books that I liked a few years ago I'm not necessarily liking at the moment. We change as readers, our tastes change, and this is just one of those cases. So Larry McMurtry has made it to the charity shop, and, you know, it's another 7 books off my shelves. Then we have Cormac McCarthy. I read The Passenger, and I hated it, so I tried reading Stella Maris, and I didn't make it past 4 pages, so I donated the remainder of the Cormac McCarthy I had to the charity shop, which was really just, what, was it Children of God or something? I kept Blood Meridian, because that was really the one that I wanted to read, but I don't know whether I want to. I just don't know whether Cormac McCarthy's for me. I talked about outgrowing him as a reader. He might have been what I wanted to read over a decade ago, but I don't know if he is anymore. Then we have Anthony Quinn. I want to read more Anthony Quinn, and I haven't done that. In fact, one of my volunteers has started reading Anthony Quinn and has now read all of his books and is going to be borrowing one of the ones that I was going to read last month, because that's the last one she's got to read. And I said, well, you may as well borrow it because I'm not reading him. I'm going to try, because she's revitalised my enthusiasm of reading his books, but that's a goal I haven't yet got to. But I think I said in my last video how that was an author I was planning on getting to once I'd read all my Elizabeth Taylor. Then I said about dedicating more time to reading, perhaps alongside writing for an hour and reading for 15 minutes, because that is something that had worked for me in the past. I'm trying to pick it back up again, but for the last 2 months, reading has not been one of my priorities, and I'm not happy about that. But I also wonder whether it's just the way my life is at the moment. If I have as much time for reading as I previously did, maybe I do just have those few hours in the evening, and it means that I read fewer books nowadays. And then I wanted to listen to more audiobooks, and I definitely haven't done this. I started, once again, the final Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book by Owen Colfer, and I keep trying it and putting it aside because I don't like it. But there are more audiobooks there I could be listening to. It's just every time I think of listening to something different than the Books Unbound podcast or Phillip's quick book reviews, I end up going to June Whitfield's Miss Marple or French and Saunders Titting About, and audiobooks just aren't on my mind at the moment. I don't know whether it's the thought that has to go into listening to an audiobook, but it's just not there. And the want isn't there. Maybe I shouldn't have made it as a goal, because I think I put it in there as a way to read more books, and I haven't done that. Something that I want to do is to read more books from my Kindle, and maybe I could change this goal out. But that was also something that I didn't intend on doing until I'd read all of the books from my shelves, and could then say, well, I've got these to read now, so that can be another project. Another project I had, which I mentioned last month, was reading the Doctor Who books. So there are other plans for after I've read all of the general fiction from my bookcases. We'll see how my goals are going at the end of September now. That's right, isn't it? It's July, August, September yet. And then the passage of time is such a strange thing. I can't believe that it's been 6 months since I originally made these goals. I feel like that was such a long time ago, but it also feels like it happened incredibly quickly, and I don't know how to quantify that. I had so many goals at the beginning of the year that I wish to achieve, and there are certain things that have got in the way. We can make these plans, but we have to also plan for things to go awry and not being able to fulfill things as best as we wanted to. But that's me. If you would like to discuss anything that I've talked about in this video, then please feel free to do so in the comments. How are your reading goals going, if you've made them? Or are you going to be making some new ones for the end of the year? Feel free to let me know. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.